Okay, welcome to Faith and Calm, class 168. If you're live, feel free to ask questions and to stop me at any point in time, and I'll continue it if I don't lose track of what I'm saying. Oh, boy, the joys of being a senior citizen. So have fun. Welcome, Suri. Yep. So anyway, this class is class number 168, Faith and Calm. We're going to talk a little bit about some lessons from Parshas Re'eh, which was the parsha that we read last week. Well, one little lesson. I called this class, I don't know what my wife titled it, but the five. You ever read Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Effective People? So, okay, if you haven't read it. This is not that class. This is according to Torah, the 5 things you can do to improve your life and to better life attitude. So I thought this was interesting. I liked it very much. And it's a very old class by Rabbi YY, so probably most people have not heard it, but I thought it was very good. It actually, I'll tell you the background to it. He was giving a class to something called the Computer Science for the Blind, CSB. And this organization applies technology to help all sorts of handicapped people, not people with Parkinson's, other people with ALS, amazing kind of technologies. And they are largely, interestingly enough, all in the life insurance business. So I think there's like 5 life insurance salesman companies in the New York area, all run by Jews, full of Orthodox Jews, because somehow life insurance and Jews go together. Don't ask me how that happened. And I guess it's, you can take off whenever you want, do what you need to do. So these are all life insurance professionals, and they all join team together, and they Shevet Achim Kam Yachad. It's they all work together on these particular issues. So they asked Rabbi YY how do you succeed in business? So he gave them these 5 tips, although he says, I have no idea what business is like. But you know what? We all have some sort of family business or some kind of business that we're involved in. It doesn't have to be money. We're trying to, make a life for ourselves. So the first set of tips was about humility. And, I'm sorry, looking at other people with a good eye. And this is good for interpersonal relationships in any case. How do you, a lot of people who insult you, hurt you, whatever. And, how do you look at, how do you deal with people in a positive way? Because as you know, the world is a mirror. If you come and you look at people and you have not excited to see them, they come back at you, they know that, and you get what gets turned around. So the first one he brought was from the Parsha. It was interesting. In the Parsha, you may not think that there's any kind of lesson in that, but there is. It talks about the kosher and non-kosher animals. And when it talks about the birds, it mentions there's one bird called the Ra. Ra, meaning in Hebrew, of course, bad. This is what's bad about this bird. So Rashi doesn't tell you too much about that. He just says that this bird had exceptional eyesight. It was very good. I had very good eyesight, which you might wonder, what's so bad about having, 1 second, let me do something here.
Thank you.
Yep. So this what's so bad about this eyesight? So the Gemara fills you in a little bit, and it says this bird could sit in Bavel in Babylon, and it was able to see carcasses like 400 kilometers away, Nevela in Israel. So again, that didn't answer the question, did it? And maybe it did, unless you're really smart. So that's good. That's a good thing. You can see so far away. No. It looks at Israel, and all it sees is the bad things in Israel. Does that sound like the normal news? I mean, some people look at Israel, they look at other countries, they look at people, they look at things, and they're experts at finding the negative in things. They're always finding the difficulties and so forth. So yeah, Israel's not perfect, but to look at Israel and to only find, you have an excellent eye for finding everything that's wrong or not working or what's wrong with somebody, this is not a good eye, not a good eye. And the this is also was some very similar to what the I believe it was the Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl once said, which was he asked the question, on Pesach, we go around and we look for chametz, and you use a spoon and you use a candle and you have a bag and a feather, and after you collect all the chametz, those 10 pieces of chametz, you burn everything: the spoon, the candle, the bag, the. And he asked the question, why do you burn the candle? The candle didn't do anything. The candle's not chametz. The candle didn't even touch chametz. It was you used it as a light. So why are you burning the spoon? Maybe the feather, yeah, touched the chametz, but the candle. So he says in Yiddish, and I'll say it in English. He says that something that its whole purpose is to go find chametz. It itself is a piece of chametz. So if you find something that's somebody's always critical, it's possible that the source of where it's coming from, it also has a critical eye. So everybody likes people who have a positive attitude. And the third story, which I haven't told this before, it's a great story. And if you've heard it before, okay, it's a fun story. There was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. His name was Shmuel Munkus. Shmuel Munkus is a bit of a comedian, and you'll see from the story what kind of a character he was. So one time he came into a town, and he found there was a lot of simple people. They prayed with a lot of honesty and sincerity, and he was spending the Shabbos there. And then Shabbos day, they happened to have an invited in a maggid. Now, these were very common in those days in the 1700s. These were traveling speakers who would go from town to town to town, but their basic modus operandi was fire and brimstone. And the more that they made the people panic and feel terrible about themselves, the better they felt. So this guy was par excellence. He started out slowly, and then he started really getting into it and telling what's going to happen to the people and all the things that he saw wrong with this town and what's going to be with the people and how they're going to burn and how it's terrible and this punishment and this punishment. And when everybody was starting screaming and crying from the mechitza and weeping and gnashing their teeth and so forth, the more they did it, the more he felt excited. He kept getting into it more and more and more. Shmuel Munkus listened to this whole story, and he couldn't stand it because he was a chassid about Baal Shem Tov. You always look at the Jews with a positive outlook. So so afterwards, he went up to this maggid's room, and he knocked on the door. And the maggid said, "Who is it?" And he said, "I'm the local shochet." So he let him in, and then Shmuel Munkus came in, and Shmuel Munkus took out his shechting knife. It's called a halal, and he started sharpening it, on the block. And the guy says, "What's going on here?" He says, "I'm the local shochet, and I listened to your talk, and it was very good, and I agree with all the stuff you had to say. And I was thinking, there's a message for us here." And the maggid says, "Yeah, there is. What do you think the message is?" He says, "Well, it's coming up. It's a month till Rosh Hashanah," which it is. It's a month till Rosh Hashanah. And on Rosh Hashanah, before Rosh Hashanah, you're supposed to go to the Kvarim, to the cemetery, to find Kvarim of Tzaddikim and ask them to intercede for you for a good year. So Maggid says, "Yeah, so what does that have to do with me?" So the Shmuel Munkus is saying, "Well, I listened to you, and I realized, this town is full of wicked people. We don't have any tzaddikim in our cemetery." So the Maggid says, "Yeah, so what do you want me to do?" He says, "I was thinking," Shmuel Munkus says, "that, I listened to you, and you're such a holy man, it would be great if, to have you in our cemetery." So the guy's going, it's starting to catch on. He's just getting nervous. Shmuel Munkus is there. He's sharpening his knife. And he says, "What's with the knife?" He says, "Well, I thought, it's coming up. We need somebody in the Kvarim." He says, "It's murder." Shmuel Munkus says, "Yeah, I know. I understand. But, we're such wicked people anyway. I'll do one sin,
and I'll save the whole town. It'll be very good, and we'll have it Sunday, and it'll be a good thing. The guy starts getting like he sees he's nervous because he's coming closer with the knife. And, what's he going to do? And he says, listen, I'm not such a perfect person. Don't think that I'm such a holy person and so forth. And Shmuel says, wow, I thought we were just getting a tzaddik. We're also getting somebody who's humble. He's not so arrogant. And he's siphoning the knife and he's getting closer. And the guy is going, wait a second, I did some Averas. And Shmuel says, look, compared to us, you're probably very minor kind of things. And the guy says, no, I did some big things. He says, like Shmuel says, like, for what? So he starts having to tell some of this, he did this, and he did other things. And then Shmuel looks at him and says, in Yiddish, I'll have to say, you fared, which means horse, but it works better in Yiddish. And he says, how can you come here and give that kind of speech and castigate everybody and make everybody feel so bad and all this musar and all this rebuke, and look at who you are. So who are you pointing fingers at and so forth? So that's the first thing.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just one little tiny thing. You don't have any examples of what he did that were, it's probably not.
No, not put in the story.
Right. Okay. Just, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry. We don't want to start getting into the.
Okay. Anyway, that's just a muscle or something.
It's a true story, but it's a.
I don't mean a muscle. It's to like bring a point about something.
Yes.
So I'll just hold my horses. Okay.
Yeah. No, thanks. Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, you have to know who you are and to know what you're capable of doing. Noach, they said about Noach that he was a person of little faith. And the rabbis asked, where do you see that he was a man of little faith? They said, well, he waited to get into the ark. They have these other kind of explanations. So I think it's Arizal who explains it. He says, no, the problem with Noach was he didn't believe in his ability to convince people. That was his problem. He went and he started building the ark, and he didn't, and he never felt that he was actually going to be able to save the people. He tried, but his basic approach was, I got to save me and my kids and take care of myself. He never really thought that he would be able or argue with God when he said to build the ark, saying, no, let's make a plan and let's try and save the people. They didn't believe in himself. And this is a problem that people don't sometimes believe in their capabilities. They don't believe in who they are. They don't believe good things can happen to them. And when you think that good things can happen to you, then good things can happen. But if you think that, that I am part of the bottom and I'm never going to ever turn out well, then it's very hot. You get used to that. The mind becomes to be assumed for failure. And I guess what? It starts becoming self-perpetuating. The story that was told about this was there was once a man. Okay, it's a funny story, probably not true. And he won the lottery, but he didn't know it. His wife knew it. So his wife was a little worried about him because she knew that he would never, it could shock him terribly if she told him directly. So she asked the rabbi, she said, Rabbi, how can I break the news to my husband? So the rabbi says, I'll tell him. So he calls the guy in. And the rabbi starts talking to them and asking him, Chaim Yankel, how do you make your money? I sell life insurance. Okay, and has it good? Well, I get by, nothing too fancy and so forth. I'm okay, but and do you do anything to try and make more money? He says, yeah, I buy a lottery ticket each week. So the rabbi says, hi, Chaim Yankel. So what would happen if you actually won the lottery? Chaim Yankel, it's not possible. That happens to people in Oklahoma, Nebraska, never people like me that actually win. So the rabbi says, well, just imagine, Chaim Yankel, imagine, what if you actually won? So he says, Chaim Yankel says, Rabbi, believe me, I'll never win. But if I would win, I would give half the money to you. The rabbi hears this and he has a heart attack and he dies. Okay, maybe not so funny. It's a joke. It's a joke. The point of the story is you have to believe in yourself and believe that good things can happen to you. When you believe that there's good things that happen to you and you can actually, that, these things do happen to you. You don't have to always be the person that's not the good things happening. And when you do have that attitude, then you know what? You're open to the opportunity and God has a channel for which to channel the blessings. So always keep that open and keep that channel open, and it will help you. The third thing is I heard it was from the prophetess Hannah. You know, Hannah is the one we learn about prayer from. And what we learned from Hannah is an interesting trait, an interesting ability. This came from the Chassam Sofer. He said, you know, Eli heard her pray, right? And he thought that she was drunk. Why did he think that she was drunk? He says, because he saw two things going on at the same time. The one hand, she never had children, and she had a lot of reasons to cry and be bitter about her life and very upset about what was going on with her. On the other hand, she was praying to God. And when she was praying to God, she saw in her a certain inner peace, glow, and happiness. And he says, it's not, you don't find that normally in a person. You find that in drunks. Drunks can at one minute be laughing and the next minute be crying. They go from one situation to the other, back and forth, like they can oscillate between the two. How is it possible that a person can have both of these? She must be drunk. And the answer is no. Hannah said, that's not the case. I'm pouring out my heart to Hashem, and I know he hears me, and I know he cares about me, and I know he loves me. And I know, although outwardly I don't see a very positive thing in my life, I love this opportunity to talk to God about my problems and to be open with him. And I know he's listening intently to every single word I say, and he cares about me and he's listening. And therefore I can be happy and I can be joyous. And this is one of the lessons in life, is about how to deal with some of the challenges and the difficulties and the problems is to have both that attitude at the same time. You know what? God is giving you a big burden. It means he's really interested in what's going on with you, especially close to you at that particular time. And he really, really, really cares a lot about you. And therefore you know that you have God on your side. And God is in charge of everything. So it's very, very comforting sometimes when you really are in tremendous trouble and you do open up your heart. You can feel good about the fact that, you know what, I've been an opportunity to really open up and to really care and to have God listen to me. I think that was very powerful. The fourth lesson, I'm not going to go too long, to go very quick now. The fourth lesson is about how to communicate to other people. So when you communicate, there are two ways that you can communicate. So one time a salesman came in for a job and he came to the boss, and the guy who's hiring the salesman, says, listen, you say you're a good salesman. You said, what's your special trait? And the guy says, I can persuade people to buy anything. And they pay a lot. And the boss goes, okay, this is an interview. Here's a cup of water on my desk. Try and convince me that I should buy that cup of water. So the guy goes over to the garbage can. He pulls out some newspapers. He wads them up. He puts them on the boss's desk. He takes out a cigarette lighter and he lights the newspaper. Not that long later, the flames start going up. And the boss is going, what is this? What are you doing? This is all going to go fire. The guy says, now, how much will you pay me for that cup of water? So, okay. So you have to sometimes, make the message solid and strong. But a better story that I liked very much about it, you'll see the message from the second one better. I like it better too. It's a little funny, that one. This is a story about a beggar. And the beggar was sitting there. And the beggar had a sign, said, please help me. I'm in terrible shape. I need money. And you know how people are. They're busy. They don't have time for you. They have their own problems. Most people went by. Some people drop a nickel, a quarter in the bucket or whatever. Things weren't going too well. And there happened to be a woman who came by. And the woman sees what's happening. And she goes over. She says, can I write something on the card? The guy says, yeah. So she writes something on the card. She puts it down. And all of a sudden, everybody who comes by is dropping lots of money in the thing. He never had this before. And the money is flowing and so forth. So he asked her, he said, what did you do? What did you write on the card? He says, I changed the wording a little bit, what it says. She says, now instead of saying, please help me, you know what it's saying? It says, it's a beautiful day today. and I can't see it. It is people, I mean, so, you have to sometimes understand where people are at when you're communicating and what they need to hear and what will affect them and so forth, rather than looking at it how yeah, you need the money. That's true. But what is your audience looking for? So part of the thing in communication is to make it relevant, to make it important, and to want people to be able to do something. And the last little lesson is, there was once a teacher. He had a bunch of high school students, and he wanted to give them a lesson. And so he took a big jar, and he put some big rocks in it. And he asked the kids in the class, he says, is there any more room? And the jar was full. So they said, no. So he went and he grabbed a bunch of, a bag of sand, and he pours the sand into the jar. And then he asked them, so now is it full? They said, yeah, now it's full. You can't put anything else in there. So he goes over and gets some water. Now he pours the water into the jar. And there was more, the water went into all the little cracks and so forth. And he says, now is it full? They say, no, now it's full. He says, okay, yeah, now it's full. So he says, and what am I teaching you here? And they say, well, in life, you're often busy and you have no time for anything else. And, but you always have some more room, some more time for something to do, one more thing. He says, that's a good lesson. And I don't deny that, but that's not what I'm trying to illustrate here. What I'm trying to tell you is that when you start filling up your life with things, make sure you get the big rocks and the big things enforced before trying to do the other order. Because if you fill your life up with all the little tasks and everything else, then you have no time for anything else. So those were the 5 little lessons that I heard, and I thought that they was worth sharing. I think that they are, again, so just to recap, it's about the looking at people with a good eye, looking at people positively, and some humility, and being able to realize that life is a roller coaster. It goes up and down, and you have to be happy, that you have Hashem, and then we have to watch who's raising their hands and be able to take questions. So I see GS is raised her hand, and go ahead.
Okay, good evening. Thank you. So about the advice that you quoted from Rabbi Jacobson, that you always, have positive attitude. I can give you example. I would love his answer. For example, when I lived in New York area, like Brooklyn, between Brooklyn and Monsey, it was just 1 year, and I noticed, that every plumber, every electrician, everybody was from community. These people were trustful, and people who hired them, they trust them. So here we go in Massachusetts. As soon as I hire anybody from construction industry, I always have only troubles. They never come in time, or they don't show up at all. So how can I have a positive attitude? In other words, what the positive attitude would be if you feel that somebody basically steps on your body.
Now, you don't have to let them roll over you and take advantage of you, and so forth. That is not what I'm talking about there. No, that would be the opposite. That would be, you don't have respect for yourself. You can't have respect for, you can't, you don't have to be a person there too. I'm talking about the, once it's over, once it's happened to you, do you hold a grudge? Do you let them live rent free in your brain day after day, thinking, and having negative feelings about them? How long do you bear this? When a negative thing happens to you, how do you react to that? Once it's happened, and so forth. And yeah, you have to ask, you have to try and, I think, maybe it's a lesson in how to shop for people, is to try and find those people who are part of the community through Jewish Boston or referrals or something else, to find people who actually care, who have some skin in the game, and they realize that if they don't treat you properly, then their whole their business will suffer. So that could be one lesson practical from that thing. But on the other side, the attitude is, okay, fine, life, like with Hannah, is oftentimes it has these really there's a lot of things in life that are unfair. And some of it seems like it comes from God. I mean, my wife was just telling me about somebody 30 years old who just passed away in the night, a perfectly healthy guy. And it seems so unfair, and it seems so unjust, and it seems and part of it is we have to understand a little humility and to realize, I don't understand this and I'm not happy about it, but there's not much, but behind it all, whatever is happening, ultimately, it's God who's behind everything. And some of these are requests to get closer to Hashem. So not everything goes the way we planned it, and everything goes the way we think it should go. And that's because there's a bigger picture than just how we see it right now. But the way to overturn the situation, and the way to grow from the situation, and the way to continue to have influence on other people is, hey, it's I'm not going to lose my joie de vivre. Life is wonderful. And on the whole, I gotta thank Hashem for every day, every morning, for all the wonderful things that did happen today that I'm not suffering from. And I think that's part of the lesson. Does that make a little sense? Help a little? Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, good. That's what I've learned. 67 years.
60 what? 67 years? Okay.
This is still learning. Okay, good. And we are recording, and good. And I'll let my wife go.
Okay, so okay, good to see everybody.
Thank you. I guess you didn't hear. Thank you.
Okay, good. So there's a really good story tonight, so please hang on. Does anybody have any questions before I begin? Good to see you, Miriam. Just saw you this Shabbos. So nice to see you again. Oh, good to see your little friend too. Okay.
He's listening very attentively.
Oh, good. Excellent. Excellent. I'll tell you, Haskell Shimon, he had an extra viewer. Okay. So I'll begin with the four things that I always say. Number one, we're in an extraordinary time. And how do we know it? We know it because the Lubavitcher Rebbe told us that we are in the beginning of the unfolding of the redemption of the Jewish people in the entire world. And the Rebbe said he said so many astounding things that nobody could imagine would come true, and they have all come true. So this one is also coming true. And secondly, our souls were handpicked to be here at this time. Third, the third thing is that we have all the tools we need to navigate this time. We have the Torah, which is our guidebook, and we have the mitzvahs, which are our power tools. And number four, what we're doing tonight actively advances the redemption. The Rebbe said that the fastest way to speed it up is to learn about the redemption. So I want to say that I think I might have mentioned it briefly last week, but this week, Thursday and Friday, we have a big job ahead of us. It's it's the beginning of the month of Elul, the last month of the Jewish year, the 12th month of the Jewish year, right before Rosh Hashanah. And Elul is considered an entire month of stock taking. And the Rebbe says that since we always have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh Elul, we have a job to do on those 2 days. On the first day of Rosh Chodesh Elul, it's the optimal time to make a cheshbon nefesh, to make an accounting of everything that happened, everything that we did the entire year that just elapsed. And then the second day, which is Friday, the first day of Rosh Chodesh is Thursday, and the second day of Rosh Chodesh is Friday. So on Thursday, we make an accounting of the year that elapsed. And on Friday, we make a plan. What do we want to accomplish in the year ahead? How do we want it to be different? How are we going to go about it? and the Rebbe, the Rebbe knows what he's talking about. It's quite a daunting thing to make an accounting of your year that just elapsed. And so the Rebbe gives practical advice. The Rebbe says that we should start with the most recent weeks. Start with that, you'll be able to remember. And when you've done, like, for example, the most recent month, you do, what happened to me, and what did I do? And then when you remember that, it'll jog your memory about the month before that, and then it'll jog your memory about the month before that, and hopefully you'll get all the way back to Tishrei and back to the last year's Rosh Hashanah. I did it last year, I know, and I don't know that I made it all the way back to Tishrei, but I made it much farther back than I could have imagined. So now, and it's helpful because it's helpful in making a plan for the next year. So, and okay, good. So then I want to say next that this week is the Parsha is Shoftim, and I'll speak probably a little bit more about it this week. I'll just say very briefly. In Shoftim, the Rebbe said one of the most revolutionary things that he ever said. Now you have to understand, the Rebbe never said the word I. The Rebbe never talked about himself, never. He always put the focus on the other person. And as many of you may know, Jonathan Sacks, when he was a young hippie or something like that, he was certainly not a rabbi yet. He went and he visited all the biggest, he bought himself a plane ticket and then a bus ticket around America, and he visited all the biggest rabbis that he could find. And the last one was the Rebbe, and he said the Rebbe was very different from everybody else. With everybody else, he noticed, oh my gosh, this one's so smart, and this one's so fast, and this one's so warm, and this one's so this. And with the Rebbe, the difference was the Rebbe didn't let him focus on him, the Rebbe. The Rebbe put the entire focus on him, who you are and who you could be. And he told him, you could be a rabbi of rabbis someday. He wasn't a rabbi. He wasn't even going in that direction. And the Rebbe told him, you could be a rabbi of rabbis. And of course, he ended up being chief rabbi of England. So anyway, so the Rebbe never spoke about himself, but in Shoftim, the Rebbe very clearly let us understand that he is a prophet. And that Chabadniks already knew, but we didn't know in that specific, in that legalistic language. Everybody knew. The Rebbe made tons of prophecies that came true. In order to be a prophet according to Torah law, you have to be a tzaddik, and you have to know the Torah backwards and forwards, and you have to make at least 2 prophecies that have come true. And the Rebbe made many more than that. So the Rebbe said, so why was the Rebbe telling us that he's a prophet? I mean, the Rebbe had already given prophecies for years. What good is it? What purpose is there in telling us that he's a prophet? And so this is what he did. The Rebbe explained to us, the Rebbe explained to us the halachic, the legal ramifications of his being a prophet. In Jewish law, if a prophet says something, you are not allowed to doubt him. It is against Jewish law. Once a prophet is a proven prophet, halachically, you are not allowed to doubt him. So the Rebbe said, the prophecy is that the Geula is unfolding, and your job is to tell everybody in your bailiwick, everyone in your circles about it. And the Rebbe said, and if you don't quite believe it, it's not the fault of the people who are around you. They don't have to suffer because you're not sure. You still have to do it. You have to tell everybody. You have to go prepare the world. That's your job. So anyway, now I'm going to go to the story that I wanted to tell for tonight. And the story is about a wild secret that saved a young person's life in the Holocaust. And it's something that each one of us can do. It's something that we can bring into our lives to revolutionize our lives. So this story, so let's start from the beginning. So there's this guy, his name is Rabbi Shimon. I don't know what Rabbi Shimon's last name is here. Do I have his last name? Okay, I'll try and find it. But anyway, he was well known in his neighborhood for benching, in his neighborhood in Yerushalayim, benching incredibly beautifully. And when he was in his sukkah, in a sukkah, you can hear everybody in everybody else's sukkah. People would just like, they would be delighted to hear in that sukkah, a few sukkahs down, how he benched. It's like nobody benches like that. Beautifully, clearly, beautiful grammar, and beautiful, sweet emotion in every word. He made each word come to life. And finally, there were these two guys. They came to him. Their names I had, but now I can't find it at this minute. And they said, "So what is this? What is this? What is it? Tell us what is this thing with benching and you?" And he said, "Okay, I will tell you." He said, "When I was a little boy and I was in yeshiva, we had a guest visitor, and it was Rabbi Meir Shapira. Rabbi Meir Shapira, known as the Rebbe of Lublin, he was extremely famous person. He's world famous for starting the Daf Yomi. It was his idea from something his mother did with him, and that his mother taught him a day without Torah is an absolute crime. And I'll tell you the part. Once his teacher didn't come, and his mother was hysterical that her kid's teacher didn't come. And he said, "Mommy, why are you so crazy? Not crazy. Why are you so upset?" And she said, "You don't understand. It's a day without Torah." From that, he understood that you can't have a day without Torah. So we started.
You know, it's an interesting thing that it's not the father. Usually you think it's the father.
Yes, it's
That
his
would
mother.
be
It was
so-
his mother. Very good point.
Very interesting.
So anyway, he's world famous now for starting Daf Yomi. And anyway, but he went to this little this cheder, this Jewish school where this guy Reb Shimon, he was a kid back then, and he said and he was teaching them a lesson, and then at the end of the lesson he said, "Dear Kinder, dear heilige Kinder, sweet children, holy children." Usually I give after I talk to people and I ask them questions like that. After I visit a class, I usually bring sweets or some kind of treats, but I don't have anything with me today. So I'm going to give you something even more special. I'm going to give you an extremely special gift. Open up your ears. And he said that, do you know which letter does not, sorry, you know the story? Oh, no. Okay. He said,
You said open up your ears, so I did.
oh, okay, good. He said, "Dear Kinder, do you know which letter does not appear in the blessing after meals in the Birkat Hamazon? Do you know which letter of the Aleph base doesn't appear there?" And all the kids were going, "I don't know," and they can't figure it out. And he said, "I'll tell you, Fe Sophis. Sometimes it's called a longer Fe, sometimes it's called an ender Fe, and an end of Fe. The Fe Sophie doesn't appear anywhere in benching." And he said, "And you know why? This was not from him. This was not, Rabbi Meir Shapira had a source. The source is from the Bach, who quotes somebody called the Tashbetz Katan. And the Tashbetz Katan explains, I'm going to read it in Hebrew and then I'm going to translate it. Lefisha kol misha berach birkat hamazon b'kavana, ein sholet bo lo af, v'lo shetzef, v'lo ketzef. And I'll translate it. Anyone, every single person who blesses the blessing after meals, birkat hamazon, with intention, meaning intention on every word, there cannot reign over here. They can't be overpowered, not by anger, not by foaming anger, and not by another kind of terrible anger of Hashem. In other words, they're protected from any kind of if Hashem is upset, Hashem is not going to be upset with that person. And what's more, they are guaranteed. He continues. The Bach continues, and this time he cites Sefer HaChinuch, and he says anybody who's careful about Birkas Hamazon, his parnasa will be available to him. He will not have a problem with parnasa. So he will, meaning livelihood. He will not have a problem earning his livelihood. So the children listened, but only one kid really listened, and that's this guy. That's this Reb Shimon. He was a kid, And he said, I'm going to do this. He's saying that if we bench, we will never have a problem earning our food, and we will never face Hashem's anger. We will never, we'll never suffer from, we'll never face Hashem's anger. So he started saying the benching slowly, and it has to be from a sitter, from a bencher or from a sitter, not just from your head, reading each word with intention. And that's what he did. And he did it so well that he missed recess every single day. He benched. It took him so long that the kids went out to play and they came back, and that's when he finished. And the other kids started calling him the benching kid, the Birkas Hamazon kid. That's how he became known. Fast forward, the dark clouds start rolling in, and it's World War II, and he finds himself separated from his family. He finds himself in line at Auschwitz. This Rabbi Shimon. And, they had the selection. You had to come to, I'm going to close this door. You had to, just a second, bring over my skirt. You had, there was that horrible Yamach, we should not remember his name, Yosef Mengele. And if he, if you were old or a kid, you went straight to the gas chamber. If you were of usable age, then you went to the workforce. Kids, gas chamber. Old people, gas chamber. And immediately. And so he was lined up, and he said, Ribono Shel Olam, for years now, I've done what you said. I did every word of benching with Kavana. And you said I'll be protected from Haron Af, Shetzef, and Ketzef, and I'll have my pranasa in an honorable form. And please, in the merit of my benching, please save me. So he stood up to his highest height, and he stood up on his tiptoes so he would look taller. And he got to Mengele, and Mengele said, to the right, which meant to the workforce. And then he's standing in line at the workforce, and they have to go to another Nazi. And he's asking everybody, okay, you're in the workforce. What do you do? What's your talent? What can you do? What can you do for us? And so he was a yeshiva bacher. He never worked a day in his life. He didn't know anything about how to do anything except learn Torah. He's thinking, what am I going to do now? He's going to realize I'm useless. What am I going to do now? But Hashem remembered him, and Hashem, he has Hashem's promise that his income, his livelihood, his bread is going to come to him in an honorable manner. And so the guy behind him, his mind is spinning. What am I going to say? The guy behind him leans over and says, say that you are a chef and that I'm your assistant. Either that, or say that you're an assistant and I'm the chef. I don't know which way it went. And so he gets there and he says, I'm a chef. And the guy behind him says, and I'm the assistant. And the Nazi says, fine, you're going to the kitchen right now. And so they worked in the kitchen. You realize what that is? That means that they didn't starve. That means that they had as much bread as they wanted to throughout the entire time that he was in Auschwitz. So not only did he have enough bread, he didn't even lose weight. He looked like a normal kid the whole time. He looked healthy, had color in his cheeks. He looked healthy. And one day a nasty German comes into the kitchen, and he sees this Jewish kid. He says, "What's a Jewish kid doing here with not burned up? What's a Jewish kid doing here with flesh on his bones?" And he got really mad. He said, "Come with me." And he took him outside the kitchen. It was freezing out there. He took him outside the kitchen, and he gave him a tiny hammer. And he said, I want you to dig into this ground. The ground was frozen. He said, I want you to dig into this ground with a hammer. You have to dig something 6 feet deep, 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. You have to dig something 6 feet by 6 feet by 6 feet deep. And he said, because the Russians are bombing, and we need a place where the German officers can lay down and be protected from the bombs. And so, and he said, and unless you do that, you can't get back into the kitchen. And so the guy's thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I can't do anything with this thing. And he tries. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And he knows it. And the guy who did it to him knows it too. And he's sitting there and he's just like, he's hammering that thing and it's not doing anything whatsoever. And a bunch of Germans pass by him in a truck and they're laughing at him with the little hammer and the frozen things. And they thought, let's just throw things at him too. And they threw everything that was on the truck at him. They threw bottles, cigarette butts, and then there was vegetables. They started throwing carrots, cucumbers, potatoes at him. They were just pelting him with whatever they could do. And he sees, oh my God, he's surrounded by vegetables. And here he is. He's like, he's in a place where Jews are starving to death every single day. He doesn't know what to do. That's not going to help him at all. Another truck comes by of Polish people. And the Polish people see all the vegetables and they see this kid who's really healthy looking and strong. And they assume this must have been, I don't know why he didn't have on the prison uniform, but they thought that he was, he must be a person in authority. And they said, can we have some vegetables? And he said, well, you can do a little work for me. You can dig a pit 6 by 6 by 6, and then I'll give you some of these vegetables if you do a good job. And so they got out, they dug the pit, he gave them the vegetables. The Nazi came out and he couldn't believe it. And he said, I always knew that you Jews have somebody that takes care of you. And that was it. And he lived through the war and he kept it up. And he said, you see now why I bench every word from a bencher with Kavana. So what is this a story about? This is a story about gratitude. It says that Hashem gives in response to the gratitude that he gets. There's an intimate tie between gratitude and Hashem giving. And it's the same is said for Asher Yatzar. For saying Asher Yatzar with Kavana, it's a big pathway for health. And for saying benching, it's a pathway to avoid Hashem's anger and for Parnasa. So it's not an easy thing to do. Since I heard the story, you can be sure that I'm trying to bench with Kavana, and already for months, I've already been trying Asher Yatzar with as much Kavana as I can. If anybody's listening who doesn't yet bench or say Asher Yatzar, the blessing that we say on our bodies, which can be found in any siddur, and if anybody wants me to help them find it, just give me just send me a message. So it's, if you don't know it, you're lucky, because then you'll do it the right way from the beginning with intention. For the rest of us who know it like the back of our hand, it's much harder to break a bad habit, but it can be done little by little. So anyway, it's like a gold mine. This story is like a gold mine for everything. So I'm going to try and take it seriously, and I invite you all to take it seriously as well. And also, it's we learned in last week's Sicha, a few weeks ago, I told you about it. It was in the Sicha of Pinchas. The Rebbe told us that what is the best way to live life? The best way to live life is as a panimi. And what is a panimi? A panimi is an inward person, an internal person. Not that you are, it absolutely does not mean that you're absorbed with yourself. Absolutely not. Rebbe says it means that you are deeply involved with whatever you are doing at that particular moment. And your mind is not on what you're going to do in 20 minutes or on what happened to you an hour ago. You are present-minded. And when we bench, our minds are flying to what happened in the past or what's about to happen in the future. That's not, so it's healthy. It's an incredibly healthy thing, and it's a calming thing to live as a Panini, to live in the present moment. It's also, these are these little pieces of advice are among the best life advice I've ever heard. So anyway, I want to wish everybody a good night, and I'm going to turn off the recorder and ask if anybody has any